Hey guys, I built the Proline Fusion SC. So if you're interested in this truck, take a look at the build. So I've got everything open. It all comes in bags labeled, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, all that. And the instructions are pretty clear. One of the first instructions is to install the diffs. And this is where I see something that's really 1/10 scale, in my opinion. And it kind of makes me question the whole 1/8 scale power with 4S thing. And I'm talking differentials. These are absolutely 1/10 scale, in my opinion. And then you have the ring gears. You know, this is actually really thin, and it could flex under heavy power. Not sure yet, you know, but I mean, this is one that I've already got put together. Most companies, they'll actually have more beef on the back side of this ring gear, you know, for gear stability, and they'll use a countersunk bolt. Not this one. So I'm kind of wondering about the durability of that and the longevity of it actually surviving big power, which mine's probably going to get. So yeah. But anyway, all the instructions are there. Everything looks good. So I'm going to get back to work. And when I get to the next step, which is, let's see, the chassis. So the diffs are together. Now in the book it said to use 500K for the center diff. And, you know, it had the 500K, but it was all leaked out in the bag, kind of made a mess. I had some old 120K and I put in there. So that's what's in that. It said grease in the front and rear axles. I put 50K diff oil in there. Now we're onto the chassis, and here we are doing some more stuff. The chassis is coming together pretty nice. This is turning nice and smooth. This right here is a heavy steel support for the chassis, which is actually pretty neat that they would put something like that into this thing. You know, I mean, it adds weight, but, you know, steel is stronger than aluminum. So as I tighten all this down, hopefully that'll just add some nice rigidity to the chassis. Pinion gear for the front end looks actually pretty beefy. And it comes with this optional clip right here, which is for big power. And since I want to be putting big power in this truck, that's going in. This is what it looks like when it's installed. Nice, clean. Also, make sure you get the front diff case with the angle on it, like you see. This way you don't have to do it twice, like I did. But anyway, now to get that on, I had to go out to the shed and dig up some old tools. It has been a long time since I've used these ugly old things. But these made getting that lock ring on a piece of cake. You could do it with a flathead screwdriver by putting it right into there. But man, if you can borrow a set of the lock ring pliers, do it. Just makes it easier. The hinge pin braces are nice and beefy. They're well labeled. Nice 4mm hinge pins. The arms are nice and beefy, just like with the Pro MT 4x4. So this looks really good. With the hinge pin inserts, you can see the actual pin holes that actually where the pins go into are all offset. This allows for adjustability. Now I'm going to set this thing up just like the factory, but these do allow adjustability of some different, you know, tuning features. If you're a really good racer, you'll know how to adjust these and get what you want. If you're a basher like me, it probably won't make much of a difference. On the hinge pin braces, you can see there's an actual dot or a little indentation, and that's how you line these up to factory specs. Pretty simple, nice and clean. So this is where I'm at. As you can see in the book, the front assembly and all that. Now it shows bushings right here on the top arms. This allows you to adjust your caster. Now I noticed there was some slop on the lower arms. I went ahead and I added one into here. Hopefully I won't be missing some bushings when I get to the rear end. But as you can see, everything moves nice and freely. It feels really solid, and I can move on to the front hub and pivot balls. The front pivot ball assembly is actually pretty simple. The ball just kind of drops down in there, and you can actually, when you tighten this up onto the actual arm, you'll use a 2mm hex wrench. And these are probably a little bit too tight. We'll find out. Now, there will be some break-in. Now, in the past with the Pro MT, I actually had to go through and thread lock these into the plastic. And also, when you put these caps in there, make sure you take your time and don't cross thread them. Just take your time. They will go in correctly. Just don't rush it. We have flipped the page in the book, and I'm onto the front CVDs. Just showing you guys how all this stuff goes together. That's getting into the steering bell crank or the steering rack. So anyway, let's get busy with these. Okay, so the book shows a set screw to go right in there to lock the little pin in place. But as you can see, the bearing actually covers it and it will hold it in just fine unless there's some looseness here. I'm not going to put the pin in because I want this pin to actually rotate. Well, I'm not going to put the set screw in. See if you can actually see this rotate. See if I can make this do it for you guys on the camera. It's going to be real difficult to get. See that rotation right there? You want that pin to rotate because it actually rolls on the cut right here. If you lock that down, then it's sliding on the cup in the cut area. So I'm going to leave the pin out and just let it rotate here versus slide in the actual CVD groove. Okay, so the front end assembly is done, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, this part right here was a major pain in the butt. You got to get through that hole into the backside, which uses a 2mm hex, which actually puts that into the arm. To actually set the screws here, you need a 3mm hex wrench, and all that stuff goes together. Was there an easier way to do it than what I did? Probably. But I can tell you right now, it is together. It runs nice and smooth. I haven't greased the actual gears yet, but they will be before it actually goes into the chassis. So it is now time to move on to the steering bell crank and work our way down like that. The steering rack went together pretty well. Now to get this tight, you can actually use the actual wheel nut wrench. Fits that perfectly, and it's also there as a pro tip. And you can also see there's a little O-ring that goes in there to help keep this from actually backing off while you're driving. Now there are some little flanged bearings, do not lose those, that go into this little crossbar or the little center link, and it just kind of connects it all together. So at this point, the steering rack is in place. You got this tiny little drive shaft, which really reminds me of a Techno drive shaft, that goes right into there to the center diff, and then that goes right into here as you align everything. Now, pay attention to this. See that ring gear? If you put that on the wrong side, you gotta go back and take it all apart and reassemble it. If not, it won't fit. That ring gear actually comes down just a little bit, as you can see right there, and it needs that groove to actually fit this into place. Putting your steering turnbuckles together was also a pain. This has to be 22mm in between here and here, so that's kind of a pain, but obviously it's doable. There we go. Steering and everything is in place. Looks good, feels smooth. Now it's time to move along to the rear end. Should be a lot more simple than the front. So after putting that front end together, this back end was a piece of cake, and I also added a couple more of the thin shims up there, and I'm not missing any. So I'm good to go. And now, according to the book, it is time to get into the CVDs. Well, it appears I was wrong. I need those bushings to go right into here. It uses these, plus those, plus the ones I've got in the front, because there they are. The rear end is put together. I've already got the CVDs done and all that. As you guys can see, now it's time to flip the page and we're getting into the rear shock tower and nose, which I've already got done as well. So I'm just simply going to assemble what you see there. Once I get done with that, then we get into some sway bars. So the rear sway bar is on, and I'm not very impressed with the design of the sway bar. I mean, this is kind of like, you know, a basher monster truck with racer tendencies, it appears. And that just doesn't really seem to be all that effective, in my opinion. The front sway bar is in place, and what I found out is it actually comes with extra links. The rears are longer than the fronts. If you try to put the rear ones on, which are longer than the front, they're going to be all up into the suspension arms. So don't do what I did. You save yourself a lot of time. Okay, so now it's got the bumpers and everything on it. Everything compresses good, just like it's supposed to. And now it's time for the shocks. Now usually in my builds, you know, the shocks are earlier on in the build, but not with this one. So as I'm setting it for the shock assembly, you can see right there 6 by 1.4 for the front, 6 by 1.6 for the rears. These are 6 by 1.2, 6 by 1.4, and I have not found at all any 6 by 1.6. So I'm just simply going to use the 1.4s in both ends. When assembling your shocks, it kind of pays to have one of these little shock shaft tools, and you get the little washer right there and a 2.5 millimeter nut. The 4 that kind of come in the package are not the right ones. There's another package, a small package with different bolts and stuff in it, and that's where you'll find the 2.5 nuts. But if you don't have these, just be careful not to scratch the shaft. I've actually done it with paper rolled over several times and a pair of pliers. But be careful, you don't want these to leak. Shocks are done, and for the most part they are air free. There are the instructions on those again. And now we get to put them on the truck itself. So the shocks are on, everything looks good. You can see how the pins go right here. It's just a pin that slides in, and then the set screw. You can see it right there in the instructions a little bit better. So time to move on. So the body mounts do not use pins. It uses your body post, a 4 millimeter set screw, and a nut, a hand nut. And that's what it looks like when it's all said and done. And it goes into there and into the truck. The battery strap assembly is actually odd. It uses this little dog bone looking pin which goes into there, and then this just kind of pulls up and just kind of locks itself into place just like that one. So odd but neat. This is the center part of your battery mount. Right there, you're going to want to put some nuts into these 3 holes, and that will go right there underneath the center drive shaft. The battery ends are in place. Now it says to go ahead and put these foams in, but these are all adjustable, so I'm going to wait and see exactly what battery I end up with. Now we're on to the steering servo, and I'm going to be using a Hiteck HS7954HS. I've used this servo in a bunch of things, crawlers, racers, bashers, and it's held up great. One thing I can tell you to not do with this truck, don't use these stock plastic horns. They will not survive. Tried it, been there with the Pro 4 MT. Nope, not a good idea. So, and this is actually a techno horn, believe it or not, with a little bit of a adjustment for clearance for a crawler. But time to put this in. With the steering servo in place, you'll see the wire actually goes underneath the actual center diff. So what I want to do just to be safe here is I'm going to add just a little bit of this to the wires down there, and to kind of keep them out of the diff, just in case I crash doing something stupid. It's possible. So the Proline Fusion went together pretty well. I would have liked to seen a few more of them little spacers that I could have kept in the arms just to, you know, tighten this up a little bit. It's got a little bit of slop in there. It would have been nice to keep those tight, but I needed those spacers at another part in the build, so it is what it is. I don't have the body or the tires yet, but as soon as I get them in, you can expect to drive with this thing. Probably going to hit some ramps and see how it flies. And then, you know, the landing that comes after the flight. But anyway, guys, so far I like the truck. The first drive will tell me whether or not it's performance-wise up to, you know, the level that I'm used to as far as racing goes, because when I race Technos. And the Technos are a tighter truck than this. A little bit more precise, you know, but that doesn't really mean this won't perform well. So I do expect this to perform well, actually, and let's go have some fun when I get everything else to finish this up. But anyway, guys, Proline Fusion SC is built and pretty much ready to go. Thank you all for watching.